the city gold, another day begins. But something stirring in the streets, a quiet hum within. From every corner, every home, a feeling starts to grow. A whisper turn into a roar, a seed that we will sow. Our vote counts, every voice, every hand, building bridges, making changes across this promised land. It's power in democracy, a future we can see. Our vote counts for you and me, for all of us to be. Some say it's just a little mark, a fleeting moment's choice, but history has shown us truth, the strength of every voice. From those who fought for freedom's song, to battles yet to win, the power of people's will, where change can truly begin. Our vote counts, every voice, every hand, building bridges, making changes across this promised land. It's power in democracy, a future we can see. Our vote counts for you and me, for all of us to be. Don't let the silence hold you back. Don't let the doubt take hold. Your truth, your hopes, your dreams unfold. A story to be told.
Hi, how are you, everyone? Welcome. Mr. Murphy, we will be right with you. Just hang on and then we'll get you back on. Yes, we would like for you to get on your camera. You can do it from your phone. It works great from your phone too. We did send you a background. You can use your background. Let me fix my background. How's everybody doing today? Welcome. Come on in. We are going to be talking to Mr. Adam Murphy from District 9 in Virginia. I am on a solo today, Ayana. We'll see how this goes. Let me see if I can fix my picture. I don't like that white line around me. Is it this one? No.
Hello?
Hello. How are you doing today?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Let me see if I can fix my picture. Why? I guess it's gonna have that outline behind me. Okay, how's everybody doing? Welcome. I guess I'm gonna be outlined today. I don't know how, it doesn't give me another option. How are you doing today? Welcome, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. No, thank you for allowing us to be here today with you. Okay, it seems I have the wrong screen, but let me see if I can fix it. Is it this one? No, I'm coming. Today we're having technical difficulties.
Let's do it.
I don't know if I have, is it this one maybe? Oh, maybe this one. Is that one the right one? Okay, there we go. I think I got the white one. Yes. How are you guys? How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Awesome. So let me introduce myself. My name is Alice. I am here with our vote counts. Today we are going to be helping introduce Mr. Adam Murphy to our team and to those who are following. Please make sure that you are sharing the live. Please make sure that you are telling anyone, everyone, all your friends that you are here. Bring them in. Remember to tap the screen so that we can stay on the FYP page so we get everybody knowing Mr. Murphy. All righty. So a little bit about our team is, let me introduce us and what our mission is. So Our Vote Counts is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens from diverse states and backgrounds united by a shared commitment of empowering voters and promoting candidates who stand for integrity, inclusion, and accountability in the upcoming elections. We are formed by a collective of educators, veterans, small business owners, students, and community advocates. Our Vote Counts represents the strength of unity across geography, race, and ideology. While our stories are very different, there's tons of us, our mission is the same: to ensure that every voice is heard and that every vote is truly counted. Through voter education, candidate outreach, and community engagement, we support leaders who are ready to serve the people, not special interest, of course, and by working across state lines and elevating local and national issues. We do aim to increase voter turnout, which is what we want. We want people to vote, inform public dialogue, and build momentum for lasting change. Our Vote Counts is more than just a name. It's a promise of movement and a rallying cry for democracy. Together, we are shaping the future, one informed vote on at a time. All righty. So how are you doing today, Mr. Murphy?
Very good. How you doing, Alice?
I'm doing great. So I didn't even have time to really introduce you. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do, and why you are here today.
Awesome. I liked your intro speech as well. That was very cool. It gave me a little bit better clarity on what Our Vote Counts is doing and the work you're up to. And it sounds like you do have a very diverse coalition, so that's wonderful.
We do. We do.
So everybody who's here, thank you for joining. My name is Adam Murphy, Democratic candidate for Virginia's 9th District, running as a Democrat in the reddest district in Virginia. There's obviously, you might have seen, there's been some potential redistricting things. We'll see how that goes. There's still a lot of things left to come on that. It might happen, it might not. The state courts might do it. We have to vote on it. There's a whole thing. But the difference really isn't going to change too much in our district. It's already a mountain to climb. A bit about me. I'm a 5th-generation Irish immigrant. I am currently living in outside of Roanoke. It's called Cave Spring, Virginia. I'm a software developer by trade. I'm 30 years old. I've been in a whole bunch of different industries in that software development. I've worked at Fortune 500 companies for insurance, investing, which is the most recent one, which I'll tell you what, I got some stories I could tell you about what the big boys do behind the scenes with trading that isn't on, Wall Street, that it's kind of, they call it behind. It's private investing, and it's okay. They do a lot of stuff that lets them stay ahead. So I learned a lot there. I've worked in manufacturing, whether it was for aerospace or plastics manufacturing. So I've learned a lot in a lot of different industries. And before all that, I was doing things like everybody else. Had to get lucky with my education. I had to be able to get the right job. Before that, I was working as a cart collector at a grocery store, bagging groceries and putting in the carts. I worked as a salesman at Best Buy. I worked as a dog bather at a PetSmart, which, by the way, that was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had to do. I would not inherently recommend it. No. And I'm running on a very... I haven't done. I'll tell you what, you don't want to have to ever expel a dog's anal glands. That is not fun. That is not fun. And that was literally like I don't want to get into it. It's probably gross for this stream. I'm just saying it wasn't fun, but it's stuff you have to do. I'm running on a very bold, I would call it progressive, forward-thinking, common sense vision. The American people have been exploited, and especially here in places in Southwest Virginia where it used to be coal country. A lot of these places get left behind. They are not considered valuable. They don't put the effort into running it. For example, in Virginia, if you're donating, let's say, to the state party or to or national groups, they typically only send about 3% of that funding down to places like Southwest Virginia. So a lot of the time, we don't get the support of the party. We don't get the support of other organizations. It tends to be focused elsewhere, and we understand why. But a lot of these people feel left behind, and they're not necessarily, they lean conservative, I would say, but I think it's mostly because they just don't feel like they're being heard. So they're mostly just kind of lashing out in a lot of ways. They feel exploited. They feel like the system doesn't care about them. And in a lot of ways, they're not completely wrong. I mean, in this moment in time, things are incredibly expensive right now in the United States. I mean, it's hard to live, it's hard to get by. People are getting priced out of existence everywhere. I've talked to people all across our district. It's the size of New Jersey as is today. If they do the redistricting, it would be even bigger than that, and it would be from tip to tail a 9-hour drive. It's a massive district, and people all around here they get exploited just genuinely by corporations, by power companies, by everything. I mean, you name it. I mean, they're not seen as valuable, and so it's hard to get investment here. And so a lot of the things we deal with today are things like AI coming into town, taking care of these resources, taking one of the most beautiful places in the world and trying to potentially poison some of the water or the air. It's rough here. I remember I had a conversation with a voter that told me about that they have an $800 power bill. $800.
Wow.
And then a $900 gas bill. And some of this is due to the equipment in their homes, maybe out of date, sure.
Yeah.
But these companies, they charge a lot here in Southwest Virginia. And, obviously healthcare is probably the biggest issue affecting folks here. That's probably one of the things I'm most strong on. I'm unabashedly pro Medicare for all. I think it's the best system. It saves us money. It gives people the lives that they deserve. It gives them the healthcare that they deserve. It gives them vision, medical, dental, all wrapped up into one, mental health. And it saves this country money. It's something that a lot of people resonate with, especially with these Medicaid cuts that just went through. I mean, people were already paying, 56-year-old single man or woman might have been paying around $700 to $800 for their own insurance. With the Medicaid cuts, it jumped up to $2,300. Things are rough, and so a lot of folks are having to choose to go without it. And in the richest country in the history of the world, that's just not right. So that's just a little bit about me, what I'm running on, a little bit kind of at the high level. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming. All right. So let me tell you a little bit how this works. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. We've got a couple of topics. Of course, since you hit healthcare, I'm going to hit healthcare first. Afterwards, we are going to ask if anyone in the chat has any questions or would like to come up and ask questions. We've got a couple of rapid fire questions that we've got some fun ones. So let's get started. All right, Mr. Murphy. So you went into healthcare, so I'm going to go into healthcare. So Southwest Virginia has some of the highest rates of chronic illnesses in the state, which I learned. And many residents live 30 to 60 minutes from nearest hospitals. So of course, rural hospitals is an issue in your district. What would you put for the federal level to improve access to this affordable healthcare in rural counties, since there are so many of them?
So you're 100% correct with these Medicaid cuts. There's literally 2 hospitals in this district, the Lee County, which is in the furthest southwest part of Virginia, and Tazewell Community Hospitals are both likely to close now due to these cuts, like full on close. And you're right that people have to drive 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes it's further than that, depending on the specialist they need to get to.
Right.
And as you all might know, that's the most critical amount of time, that first 15 to 30 minutes after, let's say you have a heart attack. Yeah. So this results in people dying needlessly just because they can't get access to healthcare. In Virginia, too, specifically Southwest, there's 11 counties out of the 28 that I'm currently trying to run for here in the district that don't have a maternity ward or an OGBYN, right? Just completely, just a desert. Nothing exists. So they have to either cross state lines to go to Kentucky or North Carolina or Tennessee or a different state to get birth, or go hours to, where there's a little bit more of a development there. And that's, again, in the richest country in the history of the world, that shouldn't be the case. So I'm unabashedly pro Medicare for all because it allows us to have this funding, support all these organizations, but that still doesn't cover that last mile, since there are so many potential closures that already exist now, and that there's many places that even if those hospitals stay together, there's still, like you said, 30 minutes to an hour for some people to have to get that care. So we really need to build out more clinics. Down here, I actually went to a nice medical clinic called Community Health Center of the New River Valley, and they're called this federally qualified community health center. It's like a very specific program. That's basically the idea I want to bring out everywhere, where it basically takes that last mile care. They have medical, dental, substance abuse, and mental health care all in the same building. And it's really quite wonderful. I mean, they were such a wonderful clinic that I'm really glad I got to visit. Yeah. And they show a standard of what I think healthcare can be. And so what we need to do is in rural Virginia especially, we need to build out those triage centers. Maybe they can't cover surgery per se. They can't cover every procedure, but they can at least cover the vast majority of stuff. And then if they have any needs, then they can get support to get to the next level of triage.
Right. So you did mention Medicare for all. We get this almost every candidate that comes up here and explains universal health care, Medicare for all, Medicaid for all. But I want to know, what does it look like to you? What does Medicare for all look like to you? Or how do you want to develop it that's different than what every other candidate, because everybody wants Medicare for all, but some candidates don't know how to explain what their plan for that is.
So Medicare for All is a roll-in of a national insurance program. It does not nationalize healthcare for everybody. It nationalizes our insurance over 4 years. And so what it does is it takes the Medicare age, I think it's 65 right now, and it drops it down to 55, then 45. I think it goes 65 to 55 is the first year. The second year is it allows kids. And then the third and fourth years is kind of cover the people in the middle because they tend to be the healthiest on average. So I agree with that perspective of it. The other aspect is that we need to understand is how do we pay for it? Well, everybody who's already working a job right now, if you get a salary, a paycheck, whatever, you're already paying for the Medicare tax right now. Like that's what actually goes to fund Medicare for all. And at the same token, if you're on fixed income, if you're on Social Security or whatever, right, the most you would pay, and this is the same for other people too, the most you'd pay for like a year's copays would be $200 a year for prescription drugs. And at the same token, this is now guaranteeing everybody the health care that our Congress people get, right? If a doctor says you need it, you're going to get it. And the benefit, the reason why it's such a good plan and why we need to really move to it is it consolidates all these programs. Medicaid, Medicare, all these other healthcare programs, all these other subsidies that we have to pay for, like dialysis centers, all of it gets rolled up into this one program that simplifies the game. It pushes private insurance out of medical decisions. They still can exist in like cosmetics or whatever, pet insurance, whatever, right? But it just makes it so that way the process to deal with healthcare, whether you're a healthcare provider, is simpler, or whether you're a patient. You don't have to deal with a middleman who has a for-profit incentive to keep raising the prices on you year after year, because they always will. That's how companies work. They have to. We can change that and set the prices as a standard and make sure that these clinics, like the federally qualified community health centers and others, get actually the funding they need to continue to operate in the area, and make sure that everybody just gets that healthcare. So that's kind of how I see it working. We might have to play around with some of the numbers, but as I'm understanding it, the current estimate with 2022 numbers is it saves $500 billion a year to aggregate all those programs into one. It saves a lot of headache and a lot of money, and it'll save a lot of lives.
I totally agree. Well, you answered all of my questions, so all in one. So is there any questions? I do have a question in the chat, but I'm not sure if you want to answer this or you want to leave it for a little bit later. They are asking, what's the biggest corporate secret you've learned in your time in tech?
Corporations are not as efficient as you think, I would say. Oftentimes the people at the top are mostly just extracting wealth out of the company. Like it's a kind of a revolving door of CEOs, especially at Fortune 500 companies, where they kind of go through these cycles, where, someone will come in that's new, and to make themselves look good on a balance sheet for the stockholders, or really to kind of guarantee themselves a good bonus, they can cut internal programs without inherently placing them, which often means cutting personnel. Right. And then that kind of is like, oh, look, we're doing all the same stuff, but more efficiently. I can now take an extra $3 million out of this program. Now, if you want to know what the most interesting thing is I learned from investing side of things, because I worked at a company that was reinsurance based. So quick overview. I know it's boring for most people for insurance.
That's what I was going to say when you explain it to those that don't understand what that means.
Absolutely. Reinsurance is just like Geico. Any insurance company goes, oh man, there's a storm coming and it's going to be hail in this storm. And we're going to have to pay out a lot of money in this area, this region. It might be billions of dollars to have to get all these cars, whatever, right? Like they have a risk with their insurance. Right. They take on all this insurance and there's risks to have to pay out, and they're trying to operate and be profitable. So they go to companies like the one I worked for and go, hey, can you take some of my risk and spread it out, make it so that way if these events occur, we're still covered? And so what a lot of these big corporations do is they actually don't trade through Wall Street. They trade through the street, or the Wall Street, as they call it, the street. They trade behind that in a private market where they actually trade bonds back and forth with each other using U.S. securities or other currencies. And the way that these inflation works, if you ever watched Office Space, you know how they're like, we're going to get pennies off every transaction. Well, they have so much money, and these deals actually don't cost that much to get into. They can pay like $300,000 twice, so $600,000, let's say, to put millions or billions of dollars from bonds on hedges that'll guarantee up or down that they'll be covered, whatever happens to the currency, whatever happens to the risk.
Yeah.
And so that's how these big corporations never lose. They just basically go, well, I got $30 million here I need to protect. I can just spend, $500,000 and I will protect it. And if the US dollar does good, we're good. If the US dollar does bad, we're good.
It doesn't matter.
It limits maximal, income. Like if you've ever done this type of strategy, like in your own portfolio type thought with like options, I guess, was bought on both sides of the equation. It's something very similar, but they do this at a scale that really allows them to never lose. And once you have that level of money, everybody's trading with specifically bonds and securities like that. They're not going and buying stock. They're using these private debt and equity. They're using bonds. They're using other currencies depending on how advanced the company is. And for companies that do this reinsurance, they operate globally. So they're hedging the bets of companies in Germany or hedging the bets of Japanese companies or et cetera, right? So that's how this stuff all works. So I learned really quite a bit behind that scenes, and very enlightening to see that.
Is this information we should be getting?
Yeah.
Alrighty, so I do have one more question in the chat, and if somebody wants to come up, also you do have the availability now. Back to healthcare a little bit. Will people's local doctors still take them under your plan? So one of the big problems that we have is we are now having. I actually work for a health insurance company. Mine works a little bit different. We are employee based, so our issues are very different. We are a what do they call them? Is it Kickstarter still? We're still a small, very small insurance company. Like a startup. Yes, we are. We're still a startup. And so we have a very young CEO. So our insurance works a little bit different. But we know that a lot of doctors now are dropping Medicaid and Medicare patients. Will your Medicare actually allow for local doctors to take them under your plan?
Yes. So a big aspect that we need to do is, like I said, I'm using that federally qualified community health center as a standard here. I've interacted with a whole lot of these companies, including local pharmacies. And when I say local pharmacies, I don't mean like CVS or Walmart. I mean like a mom and pop shop that's been open for 50 years. That is the local community drugstore, not like a big corporation. And something I find all the time, and this program really proved it out to me that this will work, is when we guarantee this healthcare to everybody, we're not trying to tell you what doctors you can or can't go to, because now this is the insurance plan for every American, right? Like that, we're guaranteeing that across the board. But what it does do is for these local mom and pop shops, a local physician, a local pharmacy, a community health center, they actually will get a slight, I think it's about 5% reimbursement rate at cost for their healthcare to make sure that they're able to stay afloat, to pay their staff, to continue to exist in this market. While when we look at the largest of the corporations, when we're talking like United Healthcare, Cigna, they will not get that benefit. So that's one way we're going to be able to provide it at a cost that actually works and cover these last mile helps and get doctors in areas where they might not normally have gone before because they couldn't afford it. And to your point, there is, because of the way the current requirements work, these community health centers are the only places that take Medicaid and Medicare patients for dental and health. They're the last stop. No one else takes them. In our place, in our district, if you compare it to like Northern Virginia, it's about 1,400 dentists or 1,400 patients, per one dentist. In Southwest Virginia, it's 9,000 patients per one dentist.
Wow.
And there's almost no more Medicaid dentists. They're all stopped. And that's because they don't get reimbursed at a rate that makes sense for them, and that they have to deal with other issues. And they like what the insurance company can provide them. But the thing is even they tell me about stories about how insurance companies are supposed to reimburse at a 2-week legal limit. And the problem is a lot of these smaller mom and pop shops, because they're not part of these internal networks that are designed to price them out, they actually get left behind, and this is not enforced at all. They are months behind of thousands, like tens of thousands of dollars that the insurance company is like, well, what?
I've heard years.
It's bad. And the thing is, they're legally. and it causes clinics to close. So we're not trying to stop you from going to the doctor you want or to the hospital system. All that is still your choice. There will be no control over by the government. The government is just here to make it a standardized insurance plan for everybody to provide it at the most efficient cost. That's all it's supposed to be.
Sounds good. I like it. Okay. Any questions for him, Mr. Murphy? If you would like to come up, let's give it about a minute or so. And then we can move on to the next subject. Any questions? Actually, why don't we do rapid fire? If anybody has any questions, you can come up. Well, let's start with we'll do the political one first. All right. We'll start with the political ones. We'll start serious and then we'll end with the fun ones. And then we'll do one question. Don't have to be long answers. They can be short and sweet. What's the best advice a local has given you during this campaign?
I've learned a lot by talking with folks. I think that's a really underrated part of politics now that we kind of take for granted. We listen to these donor classes or consultants before just talking to the people that live it. And so I have the opinion that people who live these problems every day are going to know better than anybody else. So it's important to listen. So one of the best things that I've learned about this district just by having conversations is they gave me some policy ideas. And one of the best policy ideas I've learned is since the Southwest Virginia has a decent amount of agricultural economy, there's only like 4 processing companies in the United States for USDA processing to be able to sell your meat and dairy like properly. And one person who lived in Craig County, she told me literally, hey, there's this startup company that's trying to build modular USDA processing plants that only costs like $10,000 that can be co-op owned. It can be literally right on your property and you could share it between multiple groups of farmers or cattle ranchers or whatever and have a local official become your USDA person. So they would just work with you. You wouldn't have to travel a mile to these processing plants. You wouldn't be reliant on those big companies. You could have the whole process done in-house essentially on your own farm or with your local community. And that really seemed like a no-brainer considering some of these processing plants, they cost a lot. They take a while to get to. It can be annoying. You have to schedule an appointment months out. This process would be a lot faster and allow you to be able to get to market a lot faster as well.
A lot faster. That's actually not a bad business plan. I like that. I'm in Texas, so that might actually work here too. All right.
Doesn't that sound great? Doesn't that just sound like that's actually a lot better than what we do now?
Yeah, for sure. All right, we ask everybody this: term limits or not?
Yes. I believe it. Just really quick, like if I had my idea, I think it would be probably 10-10-10. So 10 in the House or legislator, 10 in the executive, which really just means 2 terms with the weird 2 years if you got in as like a vice president thing, and then 10 years as judicial. I think that is a fair amount in each branch, and I think long term, if you're in government for longer than 30 years, you're there too long.
I agree with that. What's the first bill you'd introduce?
Medicare for all, 100%. That's my highest priority. But there's a lot of other things I'd like to do too.
What issue do you think Washington's completely out of touch with?
That's a good question. We're talking Washington, D.C., right? I think they don't really understand how bad it's gotten for most Americans. Like they don't really, when they talk price of cost of living or affordability, Zoran spoke to that because he lived that in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people in Washington, they come from a privileged background or they've made a lot of money in the business or whatever. And I really don't think they understand how tough it can be to live in America, especially when you don't have the opportunities to be able to get ahead if there isn't necessarily high-paying job. Like in our area, we lost a lot of manufacturing over time. I think that's probably one of the biggest things is that a lot of them don't understand how expensive it is to live in the United States anymore, especially if you don't already have money. It's expensive, more expensive to be poor and working class than it is to actually get ahead once you've gotten there. It becomes cheaper, which is not,
right.
It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
All right, last one. What's one promise politicians make that voters are tired of hearing? What are your...
I think there's this idea of always bipartisanship. And the reason I use that one specifically isn't that you shouldn't work with anybody in Congress to get stuff done. I agree with that perspective. But the idea that bipartisanship, that these parties, like one side of the party is right, one or they're all correct. I think that that's kind of a platitude often said about like how they get stuff done. And it kind of feels when I hear someone says, oh, I do this in a bipartisan way. It's like, So what did you do though? Like what did you actually do to get that done? Something I've learned we have some people in our campaign who volunteered, who like were interns and stuff with people on Capitol Hill for senators or for Congress people. And something I've learned is apparently they used to interact a lot more, but all this communication now happens between aides back and forth. So like Congress people don't even go knocking on each other's door to actually like solve problems. And I believe with things like Medicare for All, because it saves this country money by consolidating programs, I actually think there are contingents in Congress now who would not be a Democrat, but who I could convince if I just got in front of them and actually talked to them about it. But that, to me, it's not bipartisanship, because it's not about parties, right? It's about solving the problem for the American people. I don't care who gets the credit. What I care about is that these things get done, because nothing is happening anymore. We really need to get past this, this party gets the credit, this party gets the credit. Because I feel like when I hear bipartisanship, that's really the end goal, is to be like, the Democrats delivered this, the Republicans delivered this. And it's like, why don't we just like deliver it because it's necessary for the American people, and F whatever party got us there, right? Like we need to focus up a little bit more than just try to get credit for it.
I agree. You know, one of the things that reminds me of, have you ever seen like where kings and queens are like presented to diplomats, and then the aide comes in and tells them, hey, this is who she is. This is who she is. I feel like that's who our politicians are. They're so much bipartisan, but they don't even know who each other are. So, alrighty. So let's move on. We are going to go into, we went into a little bit of economy there. So let me go over, have a couple of questions. So Southwest Virginia often feels left out of the major federal investments. You guys get the short end of the sticks many times. So how would you infer that infrastructure, workforce, economic development funding coming out of Congress actually reaches the Appalachian? Is it Appalachian? Which one is it?
Appalachian is like the textbook way of saying it, but the people around here would know you're immediately not from here. It's Appalachian. Appalachian.
Okay, so Appalachia and rural counties instead of being concentrated in all the urban regions.
So I think the way that we could start with this is by making sure that Southwest Virginia gets these economic engines. So some of the things I want to do here is complete the last mile of rural broadband that needs to be completed out here. I think that would produce a lot of jobs and opportunity for people who live in the area. So what we would do is we'd want to pass bills using probably other people in Appalachia, but not just Southwest Virginia, but try to talk to people in West Virginia, try to talk with people in Tennessee, Pennsylvania, right, and this whole area, and convince them all that we need this and get the funding so that way our area actually gets catered to. Right now, like the biggest grants we get is like $2 or $3 million. And that's, in the grand scheme of the things that we need to actually solve these infrastructural problems with, we need to go way bigger than that. I want everybody here to have fiber. It's really bad in these mountains as you go further towards the actual Appalachians.
We hear it all the time from our Virginia girl. We got a Virginia girl we got a West Virginia girl, and that's the one thing she always tells us is we don't have good internet out here.
Well, and they don't necessarily have good self-service either, right? As you keep going out, there will be places where, boop, it just cuts out. And so I think this is a really good opportunity to make sure that these regions are connected to the 21st century and the opportunities that provides. And I think that is a way that we can bring investment into the area. We can get people to be trained up. You can go to other services. Telehealth becomes more viable. There's all these things that would improve outcomes for folks if we but had the opportunity to get to it. Right now, there's a lot of necessary need for that. Another funding thing I'd really like to bring to our area is passenger rail again. I believe that there'd be a lot of people who live in rural areas that if they could take a train to the industrial center or something, they could have a job and live in the place they want to live in Southwest Virginia, but not necessarily have to be reliant on infrastructure. So perfect example, we just had the snowstorm, right? There were people, because of this ice, that were ice out for like 10 days in Southwest Virginia. I mean, it took a while, and this is mostly residential areas, right? Like the state roads were cleared a little bit quicker than that. It wasn't that bad. But if you lived in an area and you were kind of isolated, I guess you can't go to work for a week. And, that hurts people. That hurts people already more than they're already being hurt. So that's the type of stuff I think we can really easily improve on and get the funding here specifically. And that just means making sure there's some targeted bills that address these problems directly. Like, let's build out rural broadband for Southwest Virginia and other parts of Appalachia, right? Like, and have a dedicated $100 million package or something to get that done. So it's not just, oh, well, we allocated $1 million. Good luck. Like, yes, that's nice. It's nice to have something, but it needs to be way more.
But I agree. So I did notice one of the things that was interesting about your district is its median age is in the late 40s. So you're
Yeah, it's
talking
older.
about a lot of young people that are leaving. Yeah, it's an older community. I was really surprised by that, but what federal policies would you support to help retain these young workers and graduates so that they can build careers in their district and not necessarily have to leave?
So I think that means building out education for the right types of jobs, and that means supporting some of these jobs here. I've worked with some of our development organizations here, like Virginia Works, and they've shown me that they have the ability for us to entice big companies here that do manufacturing or skills. And if they're worried, well, I don't believe that the people of Southwest Virginia will be able to do so and so job. These programs like Virginia Works, you can literally build up apprenticeship programs for the trades. You can build up certification programs and make sure, because I know the people here, they can do the stuff. It's not like it's like impossible. They just need to be given the opportunity to.
Right.
And from a congressman perspective, I want to revive something that the previous Democratic representative did back in the 80s to the 2010s. He did something called Showcase Southwest Virginia. And that's something I would like to bring back, where I actually work with a lot of these companies to figure out what their needs are, and have a relationship with all of our development authorities in our area, figure out the best place to bring some of these jobs, pitch it to the community, make sure they get it. If the local area wants to provide an incentive to really sweeten the pot, we have a lot of abandoned factories and fabs that could easily be rebuilt and reinvested into without having to go from the ground zero up to get it. And it doesn't all have to be agricultural. Some of this could be tech jobs. And that's a big reason why we need to get that rural broadband too, to show that this area is connected to the 21st century, no matter where a company wants to set down. And then we're going to train up the populace here, regardless of whether it's vocational skills, regardless of whether it's STEM or tech, or even agricultural. Like, we are going to make sure that we have the funding and the skills to be able to do whatever job we need to do, and make sure that the opportunities are provided to the people of Southwest Virginia. So if a kid goes off to college at Virginia Tech, which is in our district, and goes, well, I can't come back here, there's nothing for my degree here. Well, we can actually make sure that there is something for your degree here, and that you actually, if you want to stay in Southwest Virginia, you have that opportunity, and you will have a good life that you live.
I agree. That takes me to one of the questions that was in the chat. Not sure if you caught it, but how do we protect Southwest Virginia physical labor jobs from being replaced by AI? I know you support tech, but how do we retain those jobs without AI overtaking?
So I'm a software developer by trade, right? I mentioned that, but I'm actually very against AI. Like, let me see if I have it on my wall here. Yeah, you see right here in the middle? Does it show up well? I can't tell on my thing. It's supposed to say the people before AI.
The people before AI, yes. Yes. No, you're back. You're good. You're just, it's mirrored, but you're good. Okay.
That's one of my main understandings. Like, one of the reasons I decided to run is because I can tell what future we're building for ourselves is not a good one. There's a huge possibility, a huge one, that by 2035, if we continue this AI economy, we will have 25% unemployment. And the difference between that's Great Depression numbers. And the difference between that and the past, though, is these jobs will be gone. These companies are not going to try to bring back the jobs they've automated. And there's definitely pathways to not just physical labor jobs. If you've seen these robots they're building, there's a reason for all this stuff. There is a singular goal that big tech has. They want to automate these jobs to have control of the economy and have more control over our society. So we really have to resist things like this AI bubble that we're in, and understand that while it might not ever be as good as AGI that they say it can reach, it will still be good enough to automate jobs. And we really have to be cognizant of that, because we don't have a society that's set up in such a way that could actually protect people if we had 25% unemployment. I mean, it would devastate us. It would, and we already have some places here where, as you mentioned earlier, our working age is pretty old. So some of these people won't have the opportunity or the skill, or they'll already be retired, to be able to get back into the workforce. And if we don't have any opportunities here, it's only going to exacerbate those types of problems when they come through. And right now, that's something that I'm trying to help lead, is resisting these data centers that are being built all throughout Southwest. They're trying to. There's one in Wythe that's trying to come in, one in Wise, now one in Pulaski, one in Botetourt. There's a lot that they're trying to bring here. And Virginia already has the most data centers per capita in the entire world. We don't need any more, not here. And another big issue with it is they do NDAs and stuff. So like the community doesn't even really know kind of what the deal is or if they can trust what their community leaders are telling them. So we really have to make sure that we I would want a moratorium on AI in data centers where, hey, you need to pump the brakes. You need to prove to me that you understand this and that this is safe. Because right now, like a lot of these AI safety bills that exist, like the one in Virginia that we wanted to be passed, I think in 2024, that literally assumed that the data center or that the AI and the company was inherently secure and safe. They did not make them prove that fact, which is absurd to me. Right. With what I know about AI. It's a useful tool. I use it for coding on my own and personal projects, but as a campaign, we have a no generative AI policy for any of the information we put out, no text, no images, no video, because it's important to me to show people that I am here to represent people. Our system is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people, not for big corporations, not for special interests, not for robber baron or oligarchs. It's supposed to be for people. And that's another thing that you said, what is Washington? They've gotten away from that understanding. They don't understand that we need to be connected with our community. It's not top down, it's bottom up. And it's all of us. If you work for a living, if you get a paycheck, you are working class. I don't care how much money you make. If you have to work, you're working class. And we need to come united and resisting this tech change that they're wanting, because the path we're on now doesn't lead us to that utopia where everybody gets to work less and we have a universal basic income. That would be wonderful if that was the situation we were heading towards, but we're not. So we really need to focus up and slow down the AI developments, divest our economy back into non-mono economy ventures, and make sure that people have the opportunity to do whatever they want in life right now. And then we can talk about a public AI where we can guarantee safety and digital security, where we're not stealing your data to do so, like all these things. But we need to kind of slow down first, like crawl before we start to run, right? Because right now these companies are trying to run to this end goal and we're not ready for it.
I totally agree. We've got one more question in the chat. What would you do differently from the current representation to ensure people feel heard? You said the person that is in your position right now is a Republican, correct?
Yes.
The position you're running for?
Yep.
Okay. What would you do differently than what he does?
So one, he doesn't host any town halls. He doesn't show up in person or anything. He doesn't publicly post where he'll be because he's afraid of people asking him hard questions. I'm trying to be the exact antithesis of that. I put on my business card, I have a phone number and an email that come to me. It doesn't go through a staffer, it comes to me. And I plan, when elected, and we're doing it now, to have town halls, but when elected, the standard would be 2 town halls in every town and community in this district every year. So that way, everyone in every community has a chance to talk to me face to face, to petition me. And I tell this all the time because we do lean more conservative. And some of my policies, some people go like, whoa, I don't know about that. And I tell them, we're not going to agree on every single policy position. That's okay, though. I can guarantee you that you can talk to me about whatever your concerns on, and that we definitely agree on the goal to make Southwest Virginia the best place to live in all of the United States. That's what our goal should be. And more often than not, people get very surprised by that response because they assume that we're in this partisan politics world where it's red team versus blue team. And it's like, no, I'm here to represent you. And that means sometimes I'm going to go against the party line because that means I'm not representing you properly. And that's why I don't take corporate PAC money or foreign interest money or billionaire money, because people need to know that there's no strings on me, that this is my actual beliefs. For better or for worse, I'm here to represent you and be as open and as honest as I can about that and be in your community as many times as I can so you can talk to me about it.
I like that. Well, don't take billionaire money. You're running, but I'll take billionaire money. I'm okay with that. All right. So you've answered so many of my questions. We talked about, I was going to go into infrastructure. You did talk about our high-speed internet that limits education, healthcare. You've told us about how you want that to grow. Also, infrastructure, your roads and bridges in Southwest Virginia are aging and aging fast. Yes. Residents rely heavily on them to go to work, for school, emergency care. How would you work to Congress to secure long-term federal funding to improve safety and reliability without placing a burden on local taxpayers? That's a huge one, especially with infrastructure. Every person we've spoken to that lives in the mountains all have the same complaint. Infrastructure is hard to keep up with and federal funding is not enough. What would you do differently?
So we would have to make sure that federal funding increases, and I think that's through targeted infrastructure. So like I said, I wanted passenger rails, and I've actually connected with the United Transportation Union on understanding some of their concerns. I want Amtrak to be re-expanded into our area so we have other alternatives than just driving. But I also understand that driving is right now the most dominant form of transportation that people have. So that means making sure if we have roads that are aging, we make it a priority to get all these roads updated. For our interstate system through I-81 and 77 that grow through the majority of Southwest, we would make them 3-lane roads the whole way through, so that way they can support larger logistics. I think there was also a proposal to build a train station like hub for freight, or I think it's called land cargo. I forget the exact name. In Abington area, I believe. So kind of like in the middle, a little bit like where the interstates kind of meet. I think that would be a really good idea too. And I think with that extra funding coming in from some of these extra taxes on the freight itself, because we'd have more volume coming through, we would be able to easily afford packages for our area to make sure that Southwest Virginia doesn't have any dirt roads, right? That they're all paved. Because there's still a few places where there are dirt roads.
Well, yeah. Let me see. Someone is in the queue. I'm not allowed to see it. Question in the queue. If we can get somebody to bring them up. Let me see who might be in the queue. I'm not able to see who is in the queue. There we go. C.
Hey.
Hi, Tianka. How are you?
Good. How are you? Hey, Adam. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Sianka?
I'm doing good. Oh my God, you actually said my name right. What? It's a keeper. But in the mountains, like me and my husband, our family, we went to Tennessee. I live in North Carolina, so we took like the back roads and took was up to the mountains. And I know Virginia have mountains too, and West Virginia and all those great things. But notice when we got to our hotel, the rocks from the mountains came down and it blocked that interstate because it's a 2-lane road in the mountains.
Yeah.
I forgot what road it was. It's a 2-lane road in the mountains. So is there like would you implant like a safety thing with those? Because I know those fences get rusted and whatever, and those rocks are huge.
Oh, absolutely.
So is there like a safety issue or some kind of legislature that can help these construction workers, keep their life, of course, and people who are traveling, keep it safe, just in those small little thingies. So
yeah. So I think when we talk about updating all this infrastructure, we can make sure that there's allocated funding to either make sure that we have protected barriers or there's certain, standardized slopes. That way these types of rock events don't happen. But if they do happen, because if the, rains or there's a storm or something, right, that causes these events to occur, we can either make sure that the local departments of transportation, so this could be for Virginia, it'd be VDOT, but for North Carolina, it'd be, I guess, NCDOT. I actually don't know what North Carolina's is called.
It's NCDOT. It's NCDOT.
Right. Make sure all these programs have a little bit of funding set aside to be able to respond to those types of emergency services. Because I would imagine in that situation, you need to get a construction equipment out, essentially like a bulldozer or something to get out there quickly. And that was actually another issue with the snowstorm, right? They activated a state of emergency with FEMA. But the thing is FEMA has been gutted in a lot of ways, so they can only respond so well. I think that this should actually be in the responsibility of the Department of Transportation, and only in the critical situations where, like, okay, the rock slide is now buried a town. Okay, it's not just a single road, it's the whole town. Then that's when FEMA should come in or something. But we can make sure that there's enough funding set aside, that there's actually programs. I've often thought of it as a kind of reserve, either snow plows or a construction equipment, because I know people, my wife's brother is like a, what would you call this? Like he's a landscaper, but he also does like odd jobs for the city he lives in. He lives in Missouri though. He's not over here in Virginia. But these type of people would, what'd you say?
A handyman? The city handyman?
He is a handyman. That's not like what his job is, I guess.
Right, right.
But these people could exist as like a reserve, where they could essentially be on standby for these events and be directly paid by the departments of transportation to come out if they themselves don't have the resources in that area. Because there are plenty of people who will put a plow on their truck, who have maybe a tractor that could have moved this stuff, right? that we can make sure that these areas get covered. And it often means asking people in the local area to kind of pitch in a little bit, but we can make sure that there's funding so that way they're, rewarded for their work. So that way that doesn't happen.
Well, we don't have that problem in Texas. Well, at least not in Houston. Thank you, C. Did he answer your question?
Yeah, because the reason I brought that up was probably not a good question, but to me, we always think of bridges and roads and things of that nature, but we don't think of like people in the mountains. People do live in the mountains.
Absolutely.
People do travel through the mountains, and there are tunnels there too.
Yep.
So it needs to be have a light shine on that as well. So it's not just only bridges and roads and things, even though, yes, that needs to be taken care of, but also people in the mountains, can't forget about them. So
100%. We can't just invest with interstates, right? Either. Like it has to be every single last mile of state road. And honestly, a lot of even communities that might not have the funding in their municipality or town or whatever to actually cover that, we need to provide them that extra funding so that way they can get it taken care of. Because you're right. These roads, if these lifelines die out, or not die off, but if they have issues, these people have weeks before they might be able to do what they need to do, or have to travel hours to go around to be able to get the infrastructure, because sometimes that's the only critical way they can get to something. So I agree. We absolutely need to treat this as a high priority and make sure that they are not abandoned as they've already felt like they are.
Yeah, because that's what happened to us. I'm sorry, Alice.
No, go ahead.
That's what happened to us. And it rained, so it was flooded and it was blocked. So on our way back, because we stayed there for a week, we had to take the long way around, and that was like, oh my God. So yeah, Misty, I'm standing up for you and your mountains. Yes, Misty. All right,
we got a West Virginia girl. Thank you, C. Well, I'm about to talk about your favorite subject, so you might stick around in the chat. You might have a question.
Whee!
Nice to meet you, Sianka.
All right.
Thank you, C.
Whee!
All righty. So next question. So C is one of us. She is one of our amazing team members, and she's actually a retired veteran. So
thank you for your service.
Of course. Yes. Thank you. Now, Southwest Virginia is home to thousands of veterans. You guys have a lot of veterans. I was really surprised compared to other even larger states. You guys have a lot of veterans, yet many must drive an hour or more to reach VA clinics and hospitals. What would you do in Congress to improve timely access? I guess this goes back to healthcare too. There's a lot of veterans with mental health, and you did, talk about it a little bit. Why don't you expand a little bit on that?
So Medicare for All would also, I believe, consolidate some of the VA efforts that they need, so that way they'd be able to get that funding and have locations that they can go to. Now, I'm sure there are probably some veterans and some needs of veterans that would need to be handled separately. They couldn't all just be handled in maybe a general clinic, but the basic health care could be. But any specialized care that they might need, we can make sure that there's more VAs built. I believe in Southwest Virginia, the only one that I'm aware of, I think there might be one in Bristol or Abington, but the only other one is like Salem. So that's, again, we have a district the size of New Jersey and we only have a couple. Right. It makes it very hard for folks if you don't live along the interstate corridor to be able to get to that. And like you said, we really do have a huge number of veterans in this state. So I think a big part of building out this healthcare is also increasing those triage centers for those types of needs and make sure that they just have the services that they need everywhere. And I would follow the standards still of the federally qualified community health centers, where a VA clinic can be opened, but they get reimbursed at a slightly higher rate because maybe they're a smaller practice, because we need those lifelines to exist. We can't have them close on us. People in the richest country in the history of the world, you should not have to drive an hour to get healthcare. You should be able to get the healthcare in the county and town that you live in. At least basic standard healthcare. Maybe not surgery everywhere, but at least standard healthcare.
I agree. So another question. This one we're going to try to stay with TikTok safe words. Hopefully we don't get flagged. So veteran unalive rates remain higher than national average still in 2026, and many rural veterans often face isolation and limited time services. How would you work at federal level to strengthen mental health care, unaliving prevention programs, and community-based support for veterans in the Appalachian Virginia?
So with programs like Medicare for All, we would guarantee it, so that way you'd be able to find medical health or mental health wherever you need it. But for specifically our area, where we might not have a huge amount of psychiatrists, let's say, or therapists of that nature, I think that's where telehealth could start to cover up some of that slack. And that's why we really need to have rural internet built out for our whole area and have good internet. So that way people have at least a standard starting point for that type of service. And then two, just like with all the other ones, we need to build out these triage centers. I loved the Community Health Center of New River Valley. And that standard, they provide mental health. They provide those types of services, substance abuse services even. They had all these things in-house at one clinic, including a similar clinic they have at some of the schools. So they really had a robust program where they could bring students in. I don't see why with these same clinics, when we provide them the right funding they need, that they could also do ride shares and get people into the clinic if they can't make it themselves. And that's I think, a really huge necessity why we need to have these centers in more places, whether it be a maternity ward, just basic standard health, whether it be mental health, whether it be vision or dental. They need to have those options. And we will make sure that they have the ability to come in and get the care they need, regardless of what that care looks like.
I agree. So we always talk about the negative stuff, right? We always talk about what would you do differently? What can you do differently? I have a question. So veterans in your district, they struggle with the transition from civilian, to civilian life. What type of programs do you have currently for veterans? What type of, I don't know. So here in the town that I live in, well, it's not it's a town. We have a veterans center that actually holds meals every day and actually has parties on Friday afternoons.
Oh, that's cool.
They call them VA parties, and all the veterans are welcome. There's food, there's drinks, of course, not alcohol, but there's music and there's dancing and sometimes there's bands. What kind of things do you guys have in support to our veterans?
I think we have some of those in some of our areas. I know I've seen a lot of veterans for like foreign wars, type posts, but a lot of those times they skew very old. They're not necessarily people who were recently a veteran. And that again comes back to our district just being a little bit older. I think that we've lost in a lot of ways that level of community, and we really need to bring back these community centers. So I have a program I want to start or like a certification with healthcare that's a little bit different than just funding it with Medicare for all. It's called, I call it an ARC, but the name doesn't ultimately matter. It's the idea behind it, where it's an American Revival Center, and they pick up the slack of these services in areas where they might not already have it, where a corporation is not going to come in and do this, or if a community is pretty isolated and they don't necessarily have the organization or the local funding to build that type of a center, or if they're only operating, let's say, out of like a library, we can give them a place where it's like an actual community center, a place to gather, this third place that allows them to have that type of community and have it in a nice, safe, comfortable location that provides meals, that provides a warm bed if they need it, whatever, right? To make sure that no one gets left behind in this system. Because honestly, that a lot of our homeless ends up being veterans. And that's really just unacceptable, I think, that we shouldn't be letting these people fall to the wayside.
I agree. All right, so we've got our veteran back. I knew she'd come up and ask a question. See, Yanka?
Hi. So I'm not retired, even though I feel like I am retired, but no,
I
I'm
know,
not
I
retired.
misspoke. I'm
No,
sorry.
you're good. You're good. I feel like, my husband will be retiring this November. So yeah, in a sense, I will be retired with a retiree, a retirer, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, for as far as employment for veterans, when I'm looking for a job, I see that they're asking, okay, you're a veteran. Do you have any of these service-connected disabilities and things of that nature? And I think that's very like why you need to know type thing. Because to me, it may not be true, but I feel like I'm being discriminated against. They're like, okay, this veteran, she's suffering from A to Z. I don't think they should be able to do the work or whatever. So is there a way where veterans will be accepted no matter what they suffer from, mental health or whatever that they're having in their life, to give the opportunity?
Is that like, what is it, the DFW program, stuff like that, where they ask you those questions?
I forgot the name of how they would say it. It's a wording that they use.
I know they have like all these acronyms. When I
Right.
talked to the Virginia Works group, there was a veteran employment group, and they asked those types of questions. And the reason they told me they asked those types of questions was because this group had like multiple services in it. It was the veterans program. It was the standard unemployment and employment office type line, and all these were housed in the same building. So they were asking to see if they could either not have to duplicate effort, or if maybe certain people were better off in one program or another. What I noticed out of that, though, is they really don't have a lot of support to be able to actually find these people jobs. They've cut these fundings a lot recently, where they used to have 300, 400, 500 people. Now they're down to like 100. And they don't get automated by law, like job postings for veterans. I think that it should just be a standard. If you need a job and you were a veteran, let's find you whatever that job looks like, but let's try to find you something that you can get. A lot of times, places, at least where I live in Southwest Virginia, the job opportunities they have is inherently limited by the opportunities that are here. So they can only provide certain kind of jobs, and it's up to usually the offices there to actually go out to job boards and actually find them to put them on their job boards. There's not like an automatic linking. And I found that their technology, too, is a little out of date now. This is me coming at it from a software development perspective. But there's a lot of ways that this process could be improved. It's a lot smoother for both parties. So it's easier to apply to one and find one, while simultaneously not having to go through like a whole bunch of hoops or come into one specific building. Let's say there would be a little bit more of an online option to be able to get you started, and then kind of go from there and have kind of like a what do you call it? It's not a clinical. Like a personal relationship, I guess, where they would actually know you. They would know what your needs are, what your skill set is, and what you're kind of looking for, and then they would kind of serve those jobs to you directly.
Right.
These programs here already do that, though. Like there was like 3 veterans programs, and one of them was, I think, just the normal VA program. I think one of them was Bureau for Disabled Veterans, BDFW, something like that, I think. They had them, but it sounds like to me, the way I'm hearing it, is that you feel like those questions feel alienated, like that they are going to exclude you from opportunities. Is that my understanding that correctly?
Right. Yeah, that's how I feel when it comes down to employment. And thank you for answering that question. And another thing for healthcare, because I used to work at the VA, and I'd be hearing doctors get red tape. There's certain things that they can't do that they did in a private, and there's certain things in private that they can't do in, with the VA. So is there a way that can change? Because I love the way you said that it should be a level playing field. Don't have them do less for more.
Yep.
Because that's what they're doing,
Yep. There's a lot of problems with our current healthcare with these arbitrary lines in the sand with things that people can't do, income limits, etc. I mean, there's a whole bunch of criteria that make it more complicated than it needs to be. So when we do the Medicare for All process, when VA healthcare gets rolled into that same kind of idea, it just becomes, does the doctor say you need it and you agree to it? Okay, you're going to get it. Full stop. That's the end of the story. There is no, hey, we can't do this. There's a voucher that says in our state that you can't get an MRI or something, which is actually something that we deal with here in Southwest, because we have a company called Ballot Health, which also operates, I think, in Tennessee. And Tennessee state law has a different law than Virginia, but it affects people in Virginia. And there's all kinds of stuff like that, right? Where these healthcare monopolies or even governmental red tape sometimes makes this more difficult than it needs to be.
Absolutely.
And that's why with the Medicare for All process, it just becomes as simple as your doctor said you needed it and you want to get that procedure, that healthcare, that prescription, whatever, you are going to get it. Full stop. It's the end of the story. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. We're going to make sure that you can get the healthcare you deserve to get. That's the whole point behind it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And that also answered my question for community-based. I can talk to you all day. You know what? I'm not going to waste your time. Go ahead, Alice. I want to take over your live. Thank you so much, Adam.
You want to stay up here? You can stay up
I appreciate talking to you, Bianca. It's awesome.
You can come on.
I know, right? But I'm not dressed for the occasion, so no. I'm not going to take over your job. I'm going to go down to the comments and yeah.
Thank you, C.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Alrighty. So, next subject let me bring up. So, of course, right now, constitutional rights and voting rights is a huge one. Let's talk about voting rights just a little bit. So, as you've let us know that District 9 is very large, and it covers actually thousands of square miles And most voters usually have to drive, especially those rural voters, have to drive over an hour to get to the polls. What would you push in Congress to make voting more accessible in rural areas like yours? What are your ideas for rural? I love to hear this because I want to know, how do we get those people in the rural areas to vote more?
Well, there's actually an organization that exists called Rideshare to Vote. And again, I come at this from a software development perspective, where you could provide an Uber type app that covers a lot of government services at a much cheaper rate, because you are not having to operate necessarily for profit. And we can make sure that whether it be for healthcare, for groceries, whatever you might need, you can be able to get a ride to something, and it would be cheaper than the existing type of applications. Now, that doesn't necessarily solve everything in Southwest Virginia. Southwest Virginia is very rural. Not everybody's going to be operating on those types of apps. So the next thing I think we can do to try to make voting more accessible across the board is, I think that this is going to kind of seeming like come out of left field, but I'll circle back around to it, I promise. We need to expand the House of Representatives, right? We actually need to make it so that way the districts that we represent, there's more representatives, and they have smaller areas to cover, so that way they can truly represent their places and areas and really dive in deep to make sure that they get the support that they need. The problem with our current system is we've locked our representatives in at like 435 or whatever, and that was a 1910 bill. That was, 100 plus years ago. And if we still allowed ourselves to expand with the representation that we probably should have, it would be anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 House of Reps. And that would make our districts way smaller, but it would also make them more accessible. As a voter, you wouldn't have to travel any amount of distance, really, to be talking to your representative. You would be only covering 8 to 10 counties at most, rather than having to cover 29 and thousands of square miles. Now, I don't mind doing that. I don't mind driving it. But my point is it's a more fair system. And it would, I think, actually fix a lot of other problems in the system by allowing people to be more localized to their problems and representatives more focused on their local problems. It's something I think we've gotten away with. Everything is like a national problem now, and there are a lot of things we need to address at the national level. But I think if we had that type of support, if people could see the representative more closely connected to their community, it also would mean that they could get the voting and support that they need to actually get their area covered the way they need their area covered, specific to them. And I also think it would have to foster a lot more cooperation, because your area wasn't as wide and expansive. You'd have to work with more people to be able to get what you need done.
Right, I agree. Another question I have for you, which this one came off the top of my head because you've answered all my questions that I have written down. Right now, we currently have an attack on mail in ballots. What's your opinion, and why do you think that we have such a huge attack on it?
Well, because it doesn't favor the group that's attacking it. That's, I think, the first part. But I would fire DeJoy. I have no idea why he's still operating as the head of the USPS and trying to make it operate as a for-profit company. If any of you have used postal services, they're way more expensive than they used to be, and they're not as good as they used to be in a lot of ways. They've slowed down. The service isn't as good, not necessarily at the actual post offices themselves, but the actual mailing service is worse. And that's intentional, right? That we already seen with this Trump administration, they have an executive order where they want ballots to have to be postmarked on the day of, and now that's being challenged in court. But the whole point of that is that way people who are voting by mail, which there's hundreds of reasons why you might need to. Let's say you're a veteran serving overseas, but you're voting in your district. That would be a mail-in ballot. These people deserve to have the representation, and I don't see why we're so frustrated by it, or anybody would be. Yes, you might take a little bit longer to get an answer on election, but that's democracy, right? We want everybody who wanted to vote to be counted. It's really that simple. And as long as they got the mail-in before, like postmarked before the day of the election, it should count. I mean, it really should just be that simple. And I think, maybe down the line, if we can figure out some digital security that would be acceptable as a software developer, we're not at a level where I would truly feel comfortable, but with things like blockchain, maybe we could develop something, but it would really take a lot of effort to make sure it was truly secure before we ever really relied on it. We could maybe get to a point where elections could be run that way, but we're not at that point. And the safest and most secure way is to run it the way that we've had it, to make sure that our services that provide mail are not bad, but they're actually world class. I mean, literally one of the things we fought a revolution about was stamps, and the prices of stamps. Like, mail is a very critical part of our infrastructure. It's the only reason why companies like Amazon are able to perform the last mile services in a lot of areas, especially in places like Southwest Virginia. So we need to have a reliable mail system, and it doesn't necessarily have to be for profit, but it needs to be run far better and not partisan. It shouldn't be able to be partisan at all. And I think right now what we're seeing is that these attacks, they've made it a little partisan, and it shouldn't be like that.
A little partisan? Okay.
Pretty
You're
partisan.
being nice.
Very, very partisan. I'm being generous.
You're being nice. All right. We do have a question in the chat. Any thoughts on alternative electricity other than AEP in the southern part of Virginia?
Is that question like how I feel about like renewables, or is that question like what would I want to do with the power grid?
Misty, do you want to come up and ask, or do you want to put it in the chat? Is it renewable, power grid?
Okay.
Both.
Okay. I support renewable energy. Actually, one of the plans that I have that's kind of a way that I think we can really build up infrastructure in this country is I call it as a renewable push. It used to be maybe known as like the new Green New Deal. I support that idea. I think as a country, we need to tackle climate change. It's a very existential crisis. A lot of ecosystems are at the edge of ecological collapse. We are in a risky spot with the way that we run our farming, the factory farming especially, and a lot of the other conditions that have happened due to the pollution. So we need to be net zero by 2040, net negative by 2050. And the only way we're going to do that is if we massively invest in converting our power grid, the entire United States power grid, not a single state, every part of it, on renewable energy. That means solar farms, that means wind turbines, that means hydroelectric, and that means nuclear. Perfect example of nuclear that we could potentially consider. In Virginia, we produce, I think it's like 4,000 megawatts of power or something right now. And obviously with data centers, they want to produce more. That's not why I'm using them. I'm not against for the data centers here. But if we produce 3 large nuclear power plants, we would double Virginia's entire power output. Double it. Just with 3 nuclear power plants.
Just with 3
That also means we could convert the entire power grid from natural gas to nuclear. Now, those take a long time to do properly and build out. That's why they're not often considered the first option. Solar is the cheapest energy source of any of them to build, to roll out, to produce. If we rapidly shift all of these energy grids to renewable energy, there's a path there that actually brings our power supply down to power costs, almost down to zero. And beyond that, with the power grids, I don't really like big tech getting involved in the power grid. I don't know how many of you are aware, but 3 Mile Island got restarted by Microsoft to power a data center. And that, to me, is really concerning because big tech is now trying to get involved in power. So when we hear bills like, we want the data centers to provide their own power, I agree with that in principle. But to me, I'm hearing ding, 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 ding negatives in my head. Like, right. Do I really want Google to build a power plant that's nuclear? No. And I don't want our power monopolies, Virginia operates under power monopolies, to also have to build them out for these customers. So I think the long-term real strategy the United States really needs to consider about power, and especially internet as well, is I think they have to be considered a point of national security, actually. And I think that there is absolutely a reasonable path forward to nationalizing the power grid and providing and moving every single large-term power transformation, like the big transformers and fiber lines along with them, under the ground. Now, the reason I want under the ground is very simple. In the 1800s, there was a huge solar flare that wiped out the entire infrastructure of the telegraph wires, but it wasn't very developed yet, so it didn't affect the world too much. If that same solar flare occurred today, almost all of modern society would take up to 10 years to get back to where it's at right now. At a best case scenario. The system is not ready for that. If we had a nuclear catastrophe or a nuclear strike, God forbid, also the same scenario can happen due to the EMP pulses that come off those weapons. Or if, even worse, they develop targeted EMP type weaponry. We really need to consider this as a national security risk, that if we're not able to handle those types of disasters, it would be chaos for our country and the world. So it's something we really need to consider. And while we build out those lines in the place where they're already at, if you've ever been under one of these towers, almost nothing really grows underneath them anyway. So there isn't a huge difference between it being in the ground and not. And while we do that, we can run a fiber line right along with it. So that way, every single part in the United States is covered with power that's renewable and with internet. that's actually top tier internet, the best internet we have today.
Right.
I think that provides a huge amount of economic opportunity to do that, because that's going to take like the interstate projects, right? That's going to be like 30 plus years to get that done. That's not something that happens overnight. But that provides 30 years of economic output of us improving our infrastructure everywhere, and really gives us a much better, I think, future with renewables, because we need to get to net zero and we need to get to net negative beyond that. Like this is non-negotiable. If we don't make shifts rapidly, we're going to really, really regret it. And there won't be a turning point for us if it gets too bad. Mother Earth can kill us off and it will be fine. It will eventually rebound, but our society would not, or at least it would be forever changed like a Blade Runner future. And we don't want to live in that future, all right? We don't want to live in that future.
I agree. All righty, so let's do a little fun rapid fire now. You've answered so many of my questions. Everything you write down and then you answering them, and I'm over here like, what do I ask him now? Like, we're running out of questions. Like, I got no more questions for you. But let's do a little rapid fire. Of course, maybe to lighten up the mood, not so much serious political stuff for a minute. All righty, so I have a couple of questions. Again, rapid, you don't have to go too much into detail, but what's the best local food you've had while you're campaigning?
Best local food?
Yes.
So my favorite food is pizza. And
Okay.
I found some really nice pizza establishments throughout Southwest Virginia. There's one called Bella's, and there's another one in Marion that I can't remember off the top of my head, but both of them had a really wonderful slice of pizza. I like a good hand-tossed pizza.
Okay.
And they were both really, really good. So that's probably my favorite. There's other good food, obviously, too, but I'm a pizza guy, so that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. All righty. So if the 9th district had a slogan, what should it be? Or do you guys have a slogan?
for the campaign?
Yeah. No. If the 9th district had a slogan, if your district had a slogan, what would
it does have a slogan, actually.
That's what
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I'm not trying to interrupt.
No, there's a little lag, and I think that's why it's happening. I have a little bit of a lag. I'm sorry about that. But yes, what is your slogan?
So our district is actually the same 9th district it's been for like 150 years. They've actually kept it numbered the 9th the whole time. Usually with like redistricting, it shifts in time. So our slogan is called, "We are the fighting 9th." And we've been the fighting 9th for the entire history. So everything we do is about fighting. Like, we have to fight for our future. We have to fight for a future we deserve. We are the fighting 9th, and we're never going to stop fighting.
I love that. What's one myth about Southwest Virginia that's not real?
Well, I don't know if I could say it's not real. I think they would say it's sacrilege, but there's a lot of stories about creatures in Southwest Virginia. Yes. And you can't talk about them, but I would encourage people to look them up if you're interested. There's multiple myths, or maybe they're real stories about these creatures. So I would take a second to look them up.
All righty. It's funny that I hear that. So my sister-in-law, she went to University of Virginia, and that's one of the things that she always teases about, is that we got weird, strange people in the mountains. There's bugs that have never been discovered. There's creatures that we don't talk about. She always says that. What's the most you're not? Okay, so besides me saying Appalachian and not Appalachia, what's the most you're not from here thing people say?
Knowing some of the county and town names. There's I believe a town that if you looked at it on a map, it would look like it would be said as Dante. So Dante, but it's actually Dant, right? They say it as Dant, and if you say it wrong, they'll know. Other counties that we have, there's a county that would look like it'd be pronounced Buchanan, but it's Buckhannon. Buckhannon has a different way of saying it. There's also I like the counties because it's the most easily recognizable one that I've had to deal with. This one isn't necessarily in the 9th unless the redistricting happens, but there's a county that looks like it would be Boudatort or something like that. It's a French name. I can't say the proper French one either, but they pronounce it Batatat, right? There's all kinds of interesting things that is this is the way that people say this stuff, and if you say it wrong, they immediately go it's just an instant they know. An instant they know.
Of course. Well, it's like Houston. I live outside of Houston, but there's a road in New York that's called Houston, but it's not Houston, it's Huston. And I'm like, no, it's Houston. It's got an O. It's not Huston. So I can totally understand that. Well, you already told us their pizza place. What's an official dish? Maybe it doesn't have to be something you like. Maybe you just don't like the official dish.
I would say a very common one that I've had at like potlucks and stuff that seems to be that dish. I don't, you know, I'd have to ask other folks to for sure confirm it, but I
Okay.
think cornbread and beans. I think that's a very,
Okay.
very common Southwest Virginia dish.
Okay. What's the best location to capture? I know that you liked you one of the reasons why you moved there, it states in your biography that you loved how beautiful it was. So what's one of the best places to go take a picture?
So if you ever get a chance to start doing any of the Appalachian Trail, lots of great shots on it. I really like going up to McAfee's Knob, which is pretty close to where I am. It's on the Appalachian Trail. Beautiful, beautiful. There's like a nice, like kind of rocky outcrop that is the knob, but it's like very open and you can see for miles all around you. And the cool thing about these trails is they kind of give you some history a little bit as you go around if you're willing to look at the signs. And they'll tell you things like, on a clear day, you can see as far as 10 miles up here. And like, it really is a very peaceful and beautiful scenery. Something as when I was younger, I used to think I would like the Rocky Mountains more, but actually having been to both and now living in Appalachia, there's a reason we live here too.
Yeah.
The Rockies are great, but they're golden and dry. The Appalachians are green and they feel full of life. I mean, full of life, and in a way that you don't see in a lot of other spots. Another really cool spot is if you ever get the chance to go kind of into Tazewell or Bland counties in Southwest Virginia, which are right along is that Kentucky? I forget which one's right there off the top of my head, but it's right where the Appalachian, like the Virginia's like a triangle, right? Like right on the triangle part of the district in Southwest. Some of the most beautiful valleys you come through. Now you lose cell service, but
Yeah.
it is gorgeous to go through these valleys and see these mountains kind of roll off. And if you ever get the chance, a good like scenic drive is the Blue Ridge Parkway Drive. That's a really, really cool that goes through a lot of the mountains that kind of gives you a quick highlight of how beautiful it is here.
Right. So Misty says, don't forget the back of the dragon. Don't ride on it if you get car sick. So if you get car sick, do not go on the back of the dragon. All right. Last one. If you could choose one song for your campaign, what would it be and why?
That's a good question, actually. There's a lot of songs that could fit, but this is me speaking, all right? This is not like we have made a perfect campaign image for this song, because we've actually talked about what should be our like campaign song, because that's like a thing. One of the songs I think that fits Southwest Virginia pretty well, that's even though it's a little more modern, is the Imagine Dragons song called Warriors. I feel like that fits very well with us being the Fighting Ninth,
Right.
and just kind of the culture of Southwest Virginia, the resilience. These people have been held back in a lot of ways, exploited, extracted from, yet they always stand back up. They always stick it through. They are some of the nicest people you could possibly meet. They'll give you the shirt off your back. You'll feel a community here that you've not felt anywhere else. I mean, that's one of the reasons we moved here, is because people here genuinely are so much nicer than a lot of the places I have ever even like been in. I mean, I was blown away by how receptive the community it feels to be here. So that spirit of resilience, of fighting, that's why I picked that song.
Right. I love it. That's a great song. My son plays it all the time, so I know exactly what song you're talking about. So I have a couple of closing questions.
Okay.
Mr. Murphy, if voters in the 9th District were to look back 4 years from now, what is one meaningful change you would hope they could say you helped deliver for their families and their communities?
Medicare for all, rural broadband, and a living wage, ideally. I would say those would probably be the single most important things. That probably, like, those are all category 1. Category 2 would be better housing affordability, and brought down the price of groceries.
Okay. Besides all those policies, what would you want to be remembered for?
Like for me personally,
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't actually thought about that one before. I would probably want to be remembered that I tried, that we decided to try, that the most important thing we can do is to never give up, to lean into that resilient spirit, because things change. I mean, this district was Democratic for 30 years. It's Republican now, sure, but things change all the time, and it only happens because people were willing to come together. Like, it's not, this election isn't about me running. It's really about the people of Southwest Virginia deciding to stand back up and fight for that future they deserve. And so that's why I guess the feeling that I'd like to be remembered by is that we try, that this isn't like, this doesn't stop with my election too. This doesn't stop the things I do. It won't stop the advocacy for the region. We always have to keep going and continue to fight for that better future, because the reality is in the moment we live in, they're never going to give it to us, right? We can't ask nicely and expect these things to change. It requires all of us to come back together, to be united, and with one loud voice shout that we deserve that better future, and then go get it. Because on the other side of this chaos, it's crazy right now. It's hard to live in America. People get priced out of existence all the time. But if we focus up, if we do unite, on the other side of all this chaos, all of it, is that best future, the best future that has ever been for everyone at any point, at any time in the United States history. And to me, that's worth fighting for. Regardless of what happens, that's what we need to do.
And that's why I asked you that question, because I loved your answer. I knew you were going to give a good one. So, Mr. Murphy, it's been a pleasure. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us when your primaries and I know the general election is in November, but when are your primaries? Where can we find you? Where are your socials? How do we get in touch with you? Where do we donate?
So, primary will be June. If the state of the voters of Virginia, and there's no like weird court stuff, decide to approve redistricting, that'll probably get pushed to August. Okay. All of my socials, every single last one of them, on every platform, which I'm on every single one. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me everywhere. Every single last one of them, except for Substack. We're trying to get to Substack better, all right? That's the only one that I'm not good at yet, all right? It's Murphy, my name, MURPHY, the number 4, VA. Every single handle is that on every single platform. Okay. That's also actually the website URL too. So if you go to murphy4va.com, it has all of our platform that we have so far. We're going to adding more to the website, adding more ideas, and kind of standing on it. You'll see that I have a lot of bold ideas I'd like to do. I don't shy away from them. And you can also, in that menu there, donate. There's like a donate button. You can click on that through ActBlue. I think if you go find me on Instagram, I have a link tree that takes you to all this same stuff too.
All the places. Okay.
Yeah, and it's all, every single platform, including Linktree. It's all Murphy4VA.
You know, I totally forgot before we go. How do you feel about this whole Virginia gerrymandering, moving 10-1? What's your quick thought on it?
So I don't support gerrymandering inherently. I find it very undemocratic, and I don't understand why as a nation we haven't banned this like years and years and years ago. And I think the reality is that both parties have benefited it from some point or another, depending on what state you lived in. I understand why at the national level, the Democrats are doing this in reaction to other, redistricting efforts that are occurring. But we need to be very smart about this. In Virginia, the latest poll I saw on it was only 51 to 43%. It's not a super popular choice, and that's because people understand it's undemocratic. And why I say we have to be cautious with it is because in places like Texas, where they based it off the 2024 election, Donald Trump got really good support from groups that are now no longer backing him, like the Latino community, right? That he won those areas by some 50% in some areas, right? I mean, way better than any candidate for the Republican had done in a very long time. Well, a lot of that support is eroded. A lot of it's eroded. It's now like 20 or 25 points underwater with those same groups of people. So there's a chance that the redistricting they did will actually bite them in the butt a little bit and not actually provide what they wanted. So we just have to be cautious on it. I know Texas has done it. I know California has responded to it. There's other states like Missouri. I think North Carolina's already gerrymandered. It's Missouri. I think Indiana got shot down, but other states are trying this. So from that perspective, I support the inherent idea of having to balance it out, that if we don't fight for our democracy, it could definitely come back and bite us. But we have to go about it smartly, and we have to understand that I'm glad in Virginia it's being put up to a vote. Let these people decide if they want it. It's kind of hard to be pro it in a lot of ways though, because Virginia already had like some of the best maps in the United States. They were super fair. And if we had kind of just left them alone, or if we do leave them alone, if they don't vote for them, the current map would be 8-3. And if we have really good turnout that keeps building, as we've already been seeing in all these other special elections, it could be as much as 9-2, 10-1, or like literally if we had the margin of that special election in Texas, our district can flip too. Like this is not impossible. And that's the benefit of having those fairer maps. So something to keep in mind. Ultimately, it comes up to the state of Virginia and the voters of Virginia to decide what they want to do with it. But that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Of course. So, Mr. Murphy, it was a pleasure. So 2 things. I want to invite you to join our Discord team. We now have an official Discord where we are inviting not only candidates, but people who want to ask our candidates questions. They're in our link. Also, we want to invite you back. Every other Sunday, we do have a round table where we actually get several candidates together and we have great conversations. We've done these already several times. It has had a great result. People come together and candidates just like you running in similar positions from all over the country will come together and say, this is what we need to do. This is what we're fighting for. So I totally invite you. February 15th is our next one. Our other one will be March 1st. Also, tomorrow, do we have a one tomorrow? We do. Tomorrow we will have 2 different, we're going to have one at 3 p.m. Eastern where Mr. Savant Moore, who is running for Texas Comptroller here in Texas, is going to be coming to speak to us. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern, we have a really cool guy. I don't want to mispronounce his name, but Sultan Istvan. He's actually a really cool, interesting guy. He's traveled around the world and he is actually running for governor in California. So he will be joining us today. So please come back and join us for those tomorrow. Again, I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody who has come and joined us tonight. This has been great. Mr. Murphy, I wish you all the best. And come back and tell us about it. Hopefully when you get in your chair, because you're going to be there, right? We're going to flip it. We're going to flip it from red to blue.
This is a doable. We can do this. We can do this. And thank you for having me, Alice. Thank you.
Of course, thank you for joining us. And everybody, thank you. Let me remind everyone who we are. Our Vote Counts is a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity like Mr. Murphy, and ensure that every voice is heard. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we are building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. Join us because your vote is your power. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. It has been a pleasure.